Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
No one is illegal on stolen land, Chaos Kids. I'm
Ooh,
Naomi.
that was deep. I'm Amber. This is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Also, no one is, people just aren't illegal. That's not a thing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Wow, sister.
Hi, sister.
Hi. Oh, man.
How are things?
It's great. Thank you. I'm already drinking wine and it's 2:30. So
yeah, but I mean, it's Thursday. You work from home tomorrow, right?
I worked from
It's
home
fine.
today.
Oh, and you worked from home today.
For the record, I didn't start drinking until I was off the clock at my other job. Just want everybody to know.
Just in case anyone at the city of Kenmore is
Which
listening.
they are. I popped the bubbly after 2:30. Don't you worry about it.
Swear to God.
I'm just handing out permits to people like, you do you, boo. Whatever. Mhm.
Right.
Build that thing. I don't care. Oh my God.
Oh, well, this is the second time we've recorded this week, so we don't have a lot of catching up here.
Mm-mm.
I do have an update on one of our old stories.
Okay.
Though. So if you recall the case I covered, I wrote it down back on episode number 163. So quite a while now. Charles and Catherine Romer. Do you remember that story? They were the retired couple that were like snowbirds that would go down from...
They went missing.
And they went missing on their way back,
They might
right?
be in the water somewhere by Florida.
Or Georgia,
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
So they had checked into a hotel. It was a hotel they always stayed in because they always took the same route
Mhm.
in the same amount of time, and they stayed in the same motels on their way back. So it was in Georgia. They checked into a hotel or a motel there and went missing. And it turns out that on the 22nd of November, at the end of the year, in 2024, some guy who, I think he's one of those guys that like just takes it upon himself to go looking for missing people in the water.
Good for you.
Had gone and done he had some kind of rig. Anyway, long story short, there was a Lincoln Continental. If you recall, they drove one of those giant Lincoln Continentals. It was discovered in this big pond, literally right next to the hotel.
Oh my gosh.
That was submerged, and they went down, they dove down, they got like whatever identifiable information they could pull off the car to confirm that it is a Lincoln Continental, and he like stuck his hand in there and pulled something out, and it was a bone.
Oh my.
So there's not been, as far as I could tell, like that was the last kind of update. But essentially, it looks like they're kind of leaning towards, we think we found the roamers.
Oh, well, that's good.
So it's good. Yes, they were found. It's odd that they were found in a giant pond right next to the hotel.
Yeah, like what happened? Like the brakes went out or they lost control or...
Who even knows?
That's awful.
It's weird, right?
Yeah. Also, did this article mention the person's name who is the I just like to search in water person?
Okay, you asked me that and I just closed
I'm
it.
sorry, but I want to reach out to this person because maybe he'll go look for Larry in the...
Oh, I mean, maybe. I can't... You know what? I will get back to you on that. Let me get back to you on that. I'm right on top of that, Rose. Let me get back to you.
The dishes are done, man. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
But yeah, so that's the update. It's not 100% confirmed, obviously, that it is the roamers, but it looks like it probably is the roamers.
Oh gosh.
Mm-hmm.
And they're adult children that have just been in anguish for all these years.
Yeah, I think one of them has passed.
I feel like that sounds familiar, which is awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, because they went missing in it was like the early 80s.
Yeah.
So it's been like 40 years or something.
A long time.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wild. What are you drinking, sister?
Thank you for asking. I found this tiny bottle of Prosecco that wasn't opened, so it's not flat. It's called
good for
Zonin.
you. Zonin?
It has me zoning out. That's what it's doing. It's pretty good. I like a little bubbly.
Okay, nice.
Oh, man.
Oh, do we have anything for the good of the order?
No, not a lot, but some feedback for Jackie's blanket on Patreon. People love it.
People love Jackie's blanket
Yes.
because it's awesome.
It's awesome. Jackie, where's mine? Where's my would you rather blanket?
Jackie texted me the other day and said that the episode about the beaver drop was rich with catchphrases for merch ideas.
Yeah, the beaver drop. Oh my God. What a weird thing to do. Oh,
And by the way, speaking of that beautiful blanket, it has literally replaced my other like couch blanket as my new couch blanket.
Perfect.
It is so comfortable. It is so nice. Like it is such a nice blanket.
perfect. What a talented individual.
Yes, Jackie is very talented.
That's awesome.
And shout out to her. Sister,
Yeah.
you have a crime
I sure
for me.
shit do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
I have an unsolved murder, which I didn't know was unsolved till I got to the end of the story. And I was mad. So I'm just going to spare you being mad and tell you up front that it's unsolved. Because I don't want you to feel the way that I felt.
But you kind of want all of us to feel the way that you felt because you're going to tell us the story anyway. And we're all still going to be
I know
mad.
you're going to be mad, but you won't be clinging to hope that this is going to be resolved like I was. Paula Zahn did me dirty. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Fucking Paula Zahn. Oh my God.
God. Okay, we're going to San Rafael, California, which is about 20 miles outside of San Francisco.
Okay.
San Rafael is featured in several feature films like Clueless, Stand By Me, Bridesmaids, Basic Instincts, lots more.
Okay.
It's December 16th, 2008. It was early on a Tuesday morning when the San Rafael Police Department received a call. The caller says that a young woman, possibly a teenager, was found in the parking lot behind the 4th Street Tavern, and it appears as though the woman is deceased. So police arrive to the scene and they find a woman partially tucked underneath a car.
What?
Mm-hmm. She had multiple cuts and bruises, like from head to toe, as if there had been a struggle. When the coroner arrived, they asked if this had been an auto accident because of the severity of her injuries.
Oh my God.
I know. She also had markings on her that looked like she had been dragged across the pavement. Yeah, awful. When they get a closer look at the woman, they determine that she is not a teenager, but a woman. She was nude with her clothing scattered on the ground nearby. And the attack itself looked like it was done by someone who was extremely angry.
She was nude in this parking lot?
Yeah.
God.
I know. It had rained heavily the night before, like there was a storm. So a lot of the potential evidence had been washed away.
Oh, great. This is why it's partly probably why it's unsolved.
Yes, exactly. There were large puddles with like debris and leaves through the parking lot where she was found. And one of the detectives finds a purse on top of a neatly folded jacket sitting on the back step leading into the back entrance of the bar. And inside the jacket, they find an ID for Ashley Yamauchi.
Neatly folded.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the rest of her clothes are scattered all over the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
I know. The photo ID was a match to the victim. They also find the victim's cell phone in her purse, and there didn't seem to be anything missing from her purse or wallet, so they didn't think that this was like a robbery gone wrong.
Nothing looked out of order.
Nothing. Everything is exactly how I know this purse to be. Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a chain link fence along the back of the parking lot, and just on the other side of that fence is an apartment complex. So police talked to the residents there, but nobody saw or heard anything.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The back decks to these apartments look right over into the parking lot, but there had been a rainstorm with loud thunder the night before, which could have drowned out any screams or scuffle that may have been happening.
Okay.
And because it was so stormy, there weren't a lot of people out and about either.
Right.
So they look up and down the street for any security cameras, but the only ones that they found weren't running.
Every fucking time.
It's just a decoy.
Literally every fucking time.
What's the point?
I don't even.
Just to deter people?
I mean, I guess.
So Dolly Yamauchi is Ashley's mother, and she had the difficult task of identifying her. I can't even imagine that.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
Her brother Heath said that it devastated the entire family when Ashley was killed. She was described as extremely generous and warm with a great sense of humor. As a teenager, she was known for expressing her unique individuality, but Ashley really changed when she gave birth to her daughter, Georgia. I love that name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The two had a really special bond, and Ashley worked primarily as a babysitter to earn an income so that she could take Georgia with her. Yeah. So 33-year-old Ashley's autopsy showed that her cause of death was asphyxiation. They were also able to collect a very small amount of DNA from her body, I think through a rape kit.
Right.
Yeah.
That was going to be my question. I assumed this was a sexual assault involved.
Mm-hmm. The night that she was killed, Georgia was with her dad, and Ashley had a babysitting job. Police learned that Ashley left the home where she was babysitting around 9:15. It was cold that night, so the family offered to give her a ride home, but Ashley told them that she was headed to the 4th Street Tavern to watch Monday Night Football, and she would just walk.
Oh, no.
I know. It was about a 30-minute walk, and it was one that Ashley had done many times before. So police talked to employees and patrons from the bar that night, and nearly everyone remembered seeing Ashley there.
Okay, so she did make it to the bar.
She did make it, yeah. This stuff is so good, this zoning. Damn it. I'm going to...
Zone in on it.
I am zoning in on it. I'm topping it off. Why not?
Yep.
So she sat at the bar that night and was talking to the bartender for a while, but eventually she turned her attention to some dude that sat down next to her.
Some dude.
The two were chatting for a while and seemed to be having a good time. And witnesses said the interaction between the two was getting like progressively flirtier as more drinks were consumed.
That's how that works.
I know.
Yep.
God. Yeah. What? Yeah. I mean, that could be a real good time. Like as a single person, that could be a real good time, but you got to be careful.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it was almost closing time when Ashley and this dude left the bar through the back exit to go to the parking lot where she was later found. And the bartender figured they were just going out for a smoke and that they would be back because Ashley left her purse and her jacket on the stool where she was sitting.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So 15 minutes later, when the bar was closed, the bartender was cleaning up and was wanting to go home. And so he went out back to see if Ashley was out there, and he didn't see her. And he was the one who neatly folded Ashley's jacket and put it on the back steps with her purse and phone.
That explains that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that also means that she was probably out there dead already.
Possibly, yeah. Oh, it just gives me the chills. Yeah. He said he didn't notice anything in the parking lot when he did that. If Ashley was already dead, also you weren't able to see like the location where her body was from the back door steps. You would have had to walk down them and kind of go into the parking lot. So yeah. And you would think if they were still standing, talking and smoking, he would have seen.
You would have heard them.
You would have heard them or
least.
seen their cigarette, cherry, something.
Or something. Smoke or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Also at the scene, investigators found what appeared to be a small piece of human skin. It wasn't Ashley's, so they believe that Ashley's killer has some sort of injury, and this may help find out who this person is.
Okay.
There were a few people from the bar that night that knew the dude that Ashley left with, and so They're able to get an address for him, but when they go to his home, they learn that he has left the area.
Okay.
I know. A full-on manhunt is underway for this dude, and police are able to get a search warrant for his cell phone records, which allows them to track his location. And they find him 4 hours away in Bakersfield.
Mm-hmm.
Police apprehend him in Bakersfield and bring him back to the station. And this guy is surprised that he was being looked for, but he was really calm, like not at all nervous. He admits to meeting Ashley that night and to leaving the bar together. He said that he and Ashley had a few cigarettes before deciding to call it a night. The guy didn't have any kind of injuries on him, like not even a scratch. And they asked him why he fled the area so fast, and he said he was afraid of being deported.
Okay.
So, which is weird that you started this off with people aren't illegal. Weird.
There's more weirdness when I tell my story.
Oh, okay,
but
great.
Keep going.
He voluntarily provided DNA and was released because they didn't have anything to hold him on.
Okay.
So they're still suspicious of him and find it odd that he would leave that area like so quickly. And also that if he left and Ashley was still alive and like standing there, and then moments later she was killed by somebody else, like that's weird.
Right.
But the nature of the attack did seem really personal, as if there was somebody that she knew that she was going to be there and like possibly watching her, saw that she was with another man and was angry, maybe.
Lying in wait or something.
Yeah. So there were several people that knew that she was out that night at that tavern. And one of these people who knew was the father of her daughter, Georgia. And her friends describe her co-parenting relationship with Georgia's dad as amicable and what you would hope to have for yourself in a divorced family.
Okay.
But police also learned that shortly before her death, Ashley announced that she was moving to New York. Ashley had been accepted to a cosmetology school in New York, and she was really excited about it. And her brother Heath and her mom Dolly were already helping her pack, but Georgia's dad wasn't super happy about her decision to move. And so police are thinking like maybe that was the motivation.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Investigators bring him in and question him, and he explains that he didn't love the idea of her moving, but he accepted it. And they were able to verify that he was not anywhere near the tavern that night. He was at home in San Francisco with their 8-year-old. And her ex was like completely devastated by her murder.
Right.
He does tell investigators that Ashley had an on-again, off-again relationship with a man named Parker Harper. Stop it. Stop it, John Johnson. Rural juror.
Rural horror.
Rural horror. Parker Harper.
Okay.
Yeah. Ashley's friends characterized this relationship with Parker Harper as volatile.
Right.
Police look at his record and they find that he was arrested for domestic violence against Ashley, and she had gotten a protection order against him. Mm-hmm. Parker was a bartender in San Francisco when he met Ashley, and the two quickly moved in together. And when Ashley decided to move to San Rafael, Parker went with her. But after just a few months in San Rafael, the relationship started to deteriorate. So when police informed Parker that Ashley had been killed, he seemed genuinely devastated. He said that even though they were struggling, that they were still very much a couple. So when police asked him where he was that night, he said that he was at home by himself.
Oh, no.
I know. His cell phone records did show communication with Ashley that night, but he had no witnesses to confirm that he was at his home the entire night.
Right.
They are also questioning his status of the relationship because she was with that other dude at the bar and like flirting and moving to New York. So they're like,
right.
What do you mean you're still very much a couple?
Right.
And he said they were working on figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
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 He also said that domestic violence incident, after that happened, they decided to no longer live together. And so he moved about 5 minutes away, but they were still very much together and trying to work things out.
I don't believe this guy.
You don't?
Nope.
Okay, so I wish that I was an expert in like body language, even though I'm pretty sure that's junk science too.
Right.
Because I was watching an interview with him, and while his like words were very genuine, he was doing a lot of like darting his eyes around when he was answering questions and like looking up and off to the side. And I don't know if that's all just bullshit when people say that those are indications of lying, but it just looked
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's necessarily indications of lying, but it definitely indicates that he's thinking a lot about his answers.
Yeah.
And if he's thinking a lot about it, then he's thinking about how he wants to answer it. You know?
Yeah.
And that to me, like, indicates that the truth, the natural truth doesn't sound good. At the very least. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sort of. Although there's times when I can't recall exact things, even though I'm telling the truth. I have to think about it.
Sure.
I don't know. But yeah, there was something about his mannerisms that seemed odd to me.
Uh-huh.
For sure. So he said the last time he saw her was around 1:00 that afternoon, and that she texted him when she got off work and told him that she was going to the bar. He said that after that text, he went to bed because he had to work early the next day. So he knew where she was, and his alibi can't really be confirmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Parker also doesn't have any marks or injuries on him at all, and investigators don't have anything to hold him on.
Right. But they have DNA.
We'll get to that.
Oh, no.
But then the crime lab comes back with a report on that piece of skin, and it was determined that they couldn't confirm that it was actually human flesh.
What?
Yeah.
Was she attacked by like a cryptid?
A shapeshifter.
Or like a vampire or something?
I don't think that it might not have been flesh at all. It was a vampire.
Or an alien? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now they're no longer looking for an injured suspect. Like that's not part of the vibe. Also, the DNA that they collected was not enough to actually get a DNA profile on that they could run through CODIS. So
it's like, did this person like not ejaculate or use a condom or something? So it wasn't semen that they collected.
I don't know. It must not have been.
It must have been contact DNA or something.
Yeah. So they're just stuck waiting for science to advance enough for them to do something with that DNA. In 2010, former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger offered a $50,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Ashley's murder. Every year since her death, her family has held a vigil in the parking lot of the tavern.
Oh, God.
And that is the unsolved murder of Ashley Yamauchi. I'm sorry. I know. It was unsatisfying, wasn't it? Do you think it was Parker?
Probably. Because the chances that it was like some random stranger?
I don't know. I think the guy that she was flirting with at the bar, his explanation sounds suspicious to me.
I mean, both of them deserved more scrutiny than they got.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I am sweating my balls off in here. If I had balls to sweat off, they'd be off, but I don't.
It's that zonin.
It's
that zonin you got
fully
going.
zoning in here.
Okay, well, are you ready for a chaos story?
I am.
Okay. We're going to get into it here. We're going to do a little history.
Okay.
So, the history of the United States is riddled with broken treaties with the native people of what they call Turtle Island.
Mhm.
One such treaty is the Treaty of Fort Laramie, also known as the Sioux Treaty of 1868.
Okay.
The treaty was negotiated by members of the government-appointed Indian Peace Commission and signed between April and November of 1868 near Fort Laramie in the Wyoming Territory, with one of the final signers being Chief Red Cloud himself,
Also,
who we just
Yeah,
talked about in the bonus episode.
all I can ever think about when someone talks about Laramie is Matthew Shepard.
I know. I knew you would say
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
So the treaty had 17 articles and established the Great Sioux Reservation, including ownership of the Black Hills, and set aside additional lands as, quote, unceded Indian territory
Mhm.
in South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Montana. Among many of the provisions outlined in the treaty pertaining to lands, one of them stated that Native tribes could claim surplus federal lands and property.
Okay.
And so in 1963, when Belva Cottier, a Rosebud Sioux social worker living in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Weird.
read an article that the Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was to be closed and the property given to the city of San Francisco, she and her cousin tracked down a copy of that 1868 treaty just to confirm. And they proposed that if the property was surplus land of the federal government, the Sioux could claim it.
Oh.
Alcatraz Island, which is a 22-acre rocky island a little over a mile offshore from San Francisco, California, in the San Francisco Bay, was used by the U.S. Army for over 80 years, first as a military fort starting in the 1850s and then as a prison. In the early 1930s, it was transferred to the Federal Bureau of Prisons and was used to house prisoners who were extra troublesome at other federal prisons.
Mm-hmm.
But Alcatraz was expensive to run. According to a report in 1959, more than 3 times more expensive than the average American prison. And then in June 1962, 3 men escaped from what was supposed to be an inescapable fortress, and by the following March was shut down for good as a prison.
Now, am I recalling my data correctly that either the people who worked there had to live there or they had to be brought in every day by boat along with
One or the
supplies?
other. One or the other. There was a guard's barracks and a warden's house.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oof.
So Belva got to work and planned and organized an occupation and a court action to obtain title to the island.
Mm-hmm.
On March 8th, 1964, a small group of Sioux demonstrated by occupying the island for 4 hours. The entire party consisted of about 40 people, including photographers, reporters, and the lawyer representing the tribal members making the claim. This demonstration was an extension of what was already a prevalent Bay Area activist scene that included street theater to raise awareness of Native justice issues. Mm-hmm. This occupation was peaceful and in accordance with Sioux treaty rights. They were publicly offering the federal government the same amount for the land that the government had initially offered them, 47 cents per acre, which would be $9.40 for the entire island or $5.64 for the 12 usable acres.
Wow, that's a steal. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's literally stolen land,
It
right?
is. It's also fucking super haunted by now.
Well, there's
so
that.
I feel like that would fall into what is it called? What was it? We were talking about it once when I was talking to you about murder homes. They're classified as
yeah. What did they call that?
they're called like not compromised homes, but something.
That was the word I was thinking.
Yeah.
compromise, but that's not the word. But I know I remember what you're talking about. They also said they would allow the federal government to maintain use of the Coast Guard lighthouse located on the island. This small group of protesters left the island after they were threatened with felony charges, but it did increase media coverage for Indigenous peoples' protests in and around the Bay Area. At this point, the U.S. General Services Administration took over custody of the island. Mm-hmm. The city of San Francisco expressed a desire to turn the island into a recreational park, and the GSA set a deadline of December 1969 for the Department of Interior to submit an assessment of the potential for the site to be a federal recreation area. The United Council of the Bay Area Indian Community initially considered writing a proposal and filing an application for the use of Alcatraz by Sioux people under the conditions of their treaty. They made plans for using the buildings on Alcatraz as a cultural center. When conversations started circulating that there were talks about handing the island over to developers for commercial development, concerns about the future availability of the island grew. Mm-hmm. In October of 1969, the San Francisco Indian Center burned down. This center was important to the Bay Area Indian community and spurred on action among indigenous people. Obtaining Alcatraz for use by the local Indian community became even more important, and actions shifted from formal applications to a more immediate takeover. The first action was a symbolic boat ride. Adam Dornwall planned this boat ride for November 9th during daylight hours to ride around Alcatraz to gain the attention of local news outlets. University student leaders Richard Oakes and Lenata Means, head of the Native American Student Organization at the University of California, Berkeley, along with a larger group of student activists, joined Nordwall for this boat ride. Since many different tribes would be represented on this action, they adopted the name Indians of All Tribes for their group.
Okay.
A total of 5 boats was organized to take about 75 indigenous peoples over to the island, but none of the boats showed up. Adam Fortunate Eagle convinced a guy with a 3-masted yacht to pass by the island when their own boats never came. 5 of the young men on the yacht jumped overboard attempting to swim to shore and claimed the island by right of discovery, which is basically an old colonizer concept that land can just be claimed if no one else is claiming
I put my flag here. My flag's here.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes. It's ours now.
That's mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The Coast Guard quickly rescued the men, putting an end to their right of discovery. Lenata Means was not cool with how that whole thing went down. So she hired a fishing boat paid for by Earl Livermore, who was the director of New American Indian Center in San Francisco that had been established after the old American Indian Center burned down. Hopping on this fishing boat, they made their way to the island again, and 14 indigenous activists stayed overnight. These 14 represented many different indigenous tribes of Turtle Island, not just the Sioux, including Mohawk, Shoshone Bannock, Cherokee, Inuit, Ho-Chuk, Lakota, Pueblo, Sac and Fox, Winnebago, Cherokee, and Creek. Their plan was to split into groups so that if the Coast Guard found one group, there would still be others there to continue the righteous fight. The following day, November 10th, Richard Oakes surprised the student occupiers by delivering a proclamation written by Fortunate Eagle to the General Services Administration, which claimed the island by right of discovery, and then the overnight groups were removed. The students felt betrayed by Richard Oakes, who gave them up to the Coast Guard. There were more students on the mainland who were going out to join the 14 occupiers and bring food and supplies that same day, and they didn't understand why the 14 were returning, having no knowledge of this proclamation that gave up the Native American student occupier groups in trade for a proclamation that meant nothing and gave the natives nothing.
Right.
So the students distanced themselves from Adam Nordwall and Richard Oakes, the original symbolic boat ride dudes, who wanted to manipulate the movement. The students didn't trust their motives because of their social position in mainstream society. This was a classic case of young activists being sold out and betrayed by older activists who are like conforming to the status quo in return for status.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Lenata decided that on November 20th, they would return to Alcatraz and take it over, knowing that Richard Oakes, who publicly stated that they would not go back out to Alcatraz again, would be away at a conference. They were going to do this without him and with the element of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
In the late evening hours of November 20th, 1969, 89 natives of Turtle Island, including more than 30 women, students, married couples, and 6 kids, left Palo Alto to occupy Alcatraz Island.
6 kids?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
There was a Coast Guard blockade that prevented most of them from landing, but 14 of them made it.
Okay.
There was one Coast Guard guy guarding the island, like on the island, who had been warned that these people were coming, and he sent out a message on his radio that said, he screamed, "Mayday, Mayday, the Indians have landed."
Oh, God. Wow, dude.
Very soon after, more natives would arrive and very quickly get organized. They issued a proclamation written by Lanata, who was one of the first to arrive and would become one of the last to leave. And Lanata was described as like the real leader of the occupation, even though she would not receive the same recognition from the media as the well-known men of the group would.
Of course.
Of course. The proclamation was addressed to the Great White Father and all his people.
Oh.
"We hold the rock" was the name of their proclamation.
Wow.
In it, they offered to buy Alcatraz with $24 in glass beads and red cloth, the price paid to the natives for Manhattan Island over 300 years earlier.
Oh, shit.
They laid out their intentions to use the island for an Indian school, cultural center, and museum. Lanata had written up the grant proposal with a detailed plan to also include an ecology center, with all these endeavors run by full-time Native American consultants, teachers, librarians, and staff.
Wow.
They also cited their treatment under the Indian termination policy and accused the U.S. government of breaking numerous Indian treaties. The proclamation also said, quote, "We feel that this so-called Alcatraz Island is more than suitable for an Indian reservation as determined by the white man's own standards. By this, we mean that this place resembles most Indian reservations in that, 1, it is isolated from modern facilities and without adequate means of transportation. 2, it has no fresh running water. 3, it has inadequate sanitation facilities. 4, there are no oil or mineral rights. 5, there is no industry, and so unemployment is very great. 6, there are no healthcare facilities. 7, the soil is rocky and non-productive and the land does not support game. 8, there are no educational facilities. 9, the population has always exceeded the land base. 10, the population has always been held as prisoners and kept dependent upon others. Further, it would be fitting and symbolic that ships from all over the world entering the Golden Gate would first see Indian land and thus be reminded of the true history of this nation. This tiny island would be a symbol of the great lands once ruled by free and noble Indians."
Wow. That is very well said. Snap.
Lanata is fucking badass.
Mhm.
They moved into the old warden's house and guards' quarters and began personalizing the island with graffiti. A message appeared on the water tower reading, "Peace and freedom, welcome, home of the free Indian land." Other buildings were tagged with slogans like "Red Power" and "Custer had it coming." More and more natives arrived on the island over time, eventually swelling to as many as 600 people at various times. It kind of like went up and down.
Mhm.
A governing council was formed, and the island soon had its own clinic, kitchen, PR department, and even a nursery and grade school for its children. A security force they called the Bureau of Caucasian Affairs.
Sorry.
So good.
Yeah.
Patrolled the shoreline to watch for intruders, and a Sioux named John Trudell kicked off a radio show to broadcast updates, calling it Radio Free Alcatraz, and Trudell would become the voice of Alcatraz.
Wow.
Other activists supported the occupation by shuttling supplies and visitors from the mainland. The occupiers issued a call for contributions, and by the end of 1969, they were receiving canned goods, clothes, and thousands of dollars in cash from all across the country.
Wow. Good for them.
Celebrities including Anthony Quinn, Jane Fonda, and Merv Griffin all visited the island and lent their support, and Creedence Clearwater Revival gave the occupation a boat, which was christened the Clearwater.
Oh. That's awesome.
For most of late 1969, the occupation proceeded better than activists like Richard Oakes could have ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
The same Richard Oakes who had been out of town when the occupation started because he was not trusted by the young student activists, but had quickly joined the occupation when he saw it was proving to be successful.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. He had sent a message to the San Francisco Department of the Interior that stated, quote, "We invite the United States to acknowledge the justice of our claim. The choice now lies with the leaders of the American government to use violence upon us as before to remove us from our Great Spirit's land, or to institute a real change in its dealing with the American Indian. We do not fear your threat to charge us with crimes on our land. We and all other oppressed peoples would welcome spectacle of proof before the world of your title by genocide. Nevertheless, we seek peace."
Wow.
By early 1970, life on the island had begun to change. Many of the movement's college students and organizers had to leave Alcatraz to return to school, and they were often replaced by vagrants who cared more about living rent-free than fighting for the protest's original cause. Richard Oakes was quoted as saying, quote, "Our biggest problems are freelance photographers and the hippie. They stay and eat up our stores, then leave. Then we have to clean up after them."
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. Drugs and alcohol, both originally banned on the island, were soon circulating freely among certain members of the population. Additionally, the Coast Guard continued its blockade of the island the entire time, making it increasingly difficult to get supplies to the island.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership crisis only worsened after Richard Oakes' young stepdaughter fell to her death from one of the prison stairwells in January of 1970. Oakes and his wife left Alcatraz in the wake of the accident, leaving groups of warring activists to fight it out for control of the island. Wary of the fallout that could accompany an attempt to remove the protesters by force, President Nixon's administration opted to bide its time and leave the occupiers alone as long as they remained peaceful.
Okay.
Government officials later journeyed to the island on multiple occasions to negotiate, but their diplomatic efforts were unsuccessful. The activists were adamant that they would settle for nothing less than the deed to Alcatraz Island, while the Government Services Administration and other agencies maintained that a land transfer was impossible.
Sure it is.
It's impossible.
We don't do that. Mm-hmm.
How could we possibly?
Mm-hmm.
Our hands are tied. We can't do it.
God. Mm-hmm.
The Nixon administration decided to let the takeover play itself out, hoping that the protest would eventually just lose momentum.
Mm-hmm.
But it kept going, long after Oakes took his family and left, despite all the hardships that ensued. By May of 1970, the government had concluded that they weren't going to be resolving the situation diplomatically, and the Nixon administration cut all remaining power and phone line service to Alcatraz in an effort to force the activists out. Only a few weeks later, a fire tore across the island and destroyed several of Alcatraz's historic buildings. The protesters claimed the blaze was an accident or perhaps even the work of outside provocateurs, but it still came as a major blow to morale.
Mm-hmm.
But even with increasingly squalid living conditions and outside support drastically waning, a few holdouts continued to live on the rock for another year.
Oh my God.
Adam Fortunate Eagle, after he left the island in April 1971, told the San Francisco Chronicle, "I don't want to say Alcatraz is done with, but no organized Indian groups are active there. It has turned from an Indian movement to a personality thing."
Mm-hmm.
Claiming that they needed to restore Alcatraz's foghorn and lighthouse, government officials finally quashed the occupation on June 11th, 1971, when armed federal marshals descended on the island and removed the last of its native residents. By then, the occupation force had dwindled to a skeleton crew of only 6 men, 5 women, and 4 children.
God, that's unfortunate.
And while that last small group were forced to leave the island in defeat, the deed not transferred to any tribes, the 19-month occupation was hugely successful in solidifying Native American activists. Mm-hmm. Native rights organizations, many of them staffed by Alcatraz occupation participants, later staged occupations and protests at Plymouth Rock, Mount Rushmore, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Wounded Knee occupation, and dozens of other sites across the country. Mm-hmm. The occupation was also successful at gaining international attention for the situation of Native peoples in the U.S.
Good.
Many cite it as so influential in inspiring more direct action from Native activists that it paved the way for the 1975 Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, which allowed for Native tribes to have greater autonomy and assume the responsibility for programs and services administered to them on behalf of the Secretary of Interior. It gave tribes control over the delivery of services from the federal government based on the needs and desires of their local communities. Alcatraz opened as a national park in 1973, where graffiti by its Native American occupiers can still be seen on several of the complex's buildings.
Wow.
The National Park Service even had some of the slogans preserved or repainted when they restored the island's water tower in 2012. The Rock has also continued to serve as a focal point of Native American social campaigns. A pair of nationwide protest walks in 1978 and 1994 both began at the island. And since 1975, people have met at Alcatraz every November for an un-Thanksgiving Day celebrating Native American culture and activism.
Wow, that's fucking cool.
And that is the story of the occupation of Alcatraz.
God, I didn't know anything about that.
Mhm.
That's so cool.
It's pretty badass.
Wow. I loved that. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. We did it.
Oh, sister, we did it. And both our stories were in San Francisco.
That's weird.
Or near San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't like that. Get out of my brain.
I can't.
Oh.
Can't be done.
No.
Can't be done.
Um,
Hey, you guys, write us a little typey review on the Apple Podcast app if you have it.
Mhm.
Or at the very least, review us wherever you listen to us and help us get up in that algorithm. You know how you got to appease the algo gods,
right.
you guys. Like, it's got to be done.
That's right.
And if you really want to support us, you can become a Chaos Kids Club member over on patreon.com/crime, wine, and chaos. $5 a month gets you a bonus episode every month. And the new episodes drop a day early over there. And we're getting ready to have another virtual wine night because we finally got 10 more new subscribers to justify that. So, we do fun things over there. You can also just sign up for the Patreon as a free member and still see the things that we put up over there that are not behind the paywall because we do that too. That's where you can go see Jackie's beautiful blanket.
It is beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Woo.
Holy shit, sister.
Love you.
Second one this week. I love you too, but man, that was
So
chaotic.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at Crime, Wine, and Chaos /Patreon. Cheers.
So warm.
I am
gotta
too.
take this off. Why am I so warm? I can't. I'm in the comfort of my own home. I guess technically, I'm being recorded, but
No, not, I guess technically this is a record. No, it literally just is. It's not like a loophole. What do you mean?